Back with the Gigabyte T1000P multi-touch net verbal. A few good things, a few bad things. The positive seems like that most of my complaints are software related, so hopefully those can be addressed with some creative solutions either from Gigabyte or from the community. My biggest complaint with the software, of course, is that it is Windows 7 Starter Edition, which completely cripples the multi-touch capabilities of the netbook by having none. The 1366 by 768 resolution is actually pretty nice. It takes a little bit of getting used to after having a couple of netbooks with the 1024 by 600 resolution. Actually, I really like it. Web pages fit a lot better. Controls fit a lot better on the screen. The resistive touchscreen is very responsive. It does not take a heavy touch, obviously. Obviously, it's a little heavier touch than a capacitive screen would be, but I'm not having to really mash on the screen to achieve these results. So it's pleasantly sensitive to touch. There's one little bit of an oddity, and it's going to be difficult to demonstrate in video, but it feels like there's a little bit of a gap between the touch part of the screen and the screen itself, or perhaps maybe between the matte layer on the screen and the screen itself. It does have a matte finish on the screen, as you can see. There's very little glare, very acceptable. I'm in a room here with some big windows behind me, and the screen is still perfectly viewable, which is very nice. It's bright, clear, clean, easy to read. The higher resolution does make it a little bit, I think, easier on your eyes if you have good eyes. If you have poor eyes, then obviously the smaller items are going to be a problem, so you probably need to increase the DPI. Looking a little more at the tablet capabilities of the netbook, we're going to see that, of course, it is multi-touch resistive, which means that I am able to use a stylus on the screen. The screen is responsive. The computer is pretty quick based on what it is. Atom N470 Pine Trail processor, 1 gig of RAM. So it does seem to work pretty well in that regard. One complaint I have is that when converting to tablet mode, the computer is either unwilling or unable to recognize that you have put it into a portrait mode. And what Gigabyte would have you do instead is use this mystery button from earlier to bring up the Gigabyte Smart Manager, which then you can use to rotate display by tapping on this icon here. My biggest complaint with that then is that, now it's rotated and everything's great, and you're done using it. When you go to put it back into just regular old computer mode, we're going to have to tap this 1, 2, 3 times to get it back into our landscape mode here, which is more than a little bit of an inconvenience. It does also have some capability here for being able to turn on and off power to the webcam, control the display, turn on Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, adjust the volume, things like that, with more of a touch-friendly interface. You can use multi-touch gestures on the touchpad in Windows 7 Starter, but of course that's not why we buy multi-touch tablets. Also, since we can't use those multi-touch gestures in the web browser, if we want to browse using the scroll bars, the little bit of a lip on the edge of the bezel here, it's not a smooth screen finish, so this little bit of a lip sometimes makes it tough to really get in there and get the very narrow scroll bar. When it comes to playing video, in window playback for flash is fine. Here we've got burn notice. We'll see that it plays pretty well in the window, but once I maximize the window, any real watchability here is pretty much lost. However, flash video has been the only place I've had any significant trouble watching full screen video. Here is the 1080p Coral Reef demo from the Microsoft website, WMV format. You can see full screen, perfectly smooth playback, very acceptable, very watchable. The 1366 by 768 screen makes it nice to look at. It's a little bit washed out. The screen probably isn't top of the line as far as color reproduction, black level reproduction, but it's still an enjoyable watch. The other thing I was pleasantly surprised by was the ability to watch Netflix in full screen with still very acceptable playback quality. I'll go ahead and fire that off.
All hands to battle stations. Engage.
So you can see playback here is very smooth. So it's very watchable. You could output this to a TV and even get some decent watchability out of it. Turn the volume down here a little bit. One thing it's difficult to come through in this video, I was very impressed by the sound that comes out of such a small little computer. There's really good stereo separation from the speakers, which are down here on the bottom of the computer, so I don't know if it's because of their ability to reflect off a surface, but it does produce really good stereo and even some kind of pseudo 3D effects. Back here on the full laptop, we have some indicator lights for things you would expect to have indicator lights for. We have Bluetooth, wireless, hard drive, battery, and power. Up here we have numlock, caps lock, and 3G indicator. One thing worth noting, unlike other companies that will sometimes, if you don't buy a laptop with the 3G card in, they won't put the socket on the motherboard for the mini PCI Express card for the 3G. Gigabyte does. There is an empty slot right next to the network card slot available for you to put a 3G card or perhaps an ATSC tuner or something else. There's also a spot for the stylus there on the screen. It does have a webcam and a microphone built in. We can draw a few lines on the screen. So you can see that while the pen is not hyper responsive, it is definitely acceptable. So there you have it, the Gigabyte T1000P multi-touch net vertible. In my opinion, the pros are that the screen is in the higher resolution 1366 by 768, which is very difficult to find in a 10-inch netbook, let alone a 10-inch convertible netbook. Multi-touch resistive screen, although the multi-touch is very much hampered by the Windows 7 Starter Edition. The screen itself is very responsive to touch, handles both finger and stylus input because it is resistive touch, and it is a very easy to read, bright screen. It does wash out in direct sunlight, but I took it outside, sat under a tree, and it was perfectly usable in an environment like that on a nice bright sunny day. So the screen is acceptably bright for me. The color is decent, the black level is decent. Cons, of course, are going to be the Windows 7 Starter Edition. The computer is either unable or unwilling to detect when you rotate the screen and automatically change the orientation. All in all, a good computer, I think. Pretty snappy, pretty quick to respond to tasks like ABIT. But we'll see how it turns out after a few upgrades. Hard drive, going to an SSD, going to 2 gig of RAM, and going to Windows 7 Home Premium. So we'll see how it goes with that. Thanks.